Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low Magazine yet? 4Low Magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations, I have the pleasure of speaking with a guy that knew what he wanted to do from a young age. From going to drag races as a kid with his dad, then as an employee at super shops, to racing in NHRA events all across the country, off-roading in the Sierras for fun, to racing KOH. My guest is none other than Les Figueroa. Well, it's great to have you on the air today, Les. I'm really looking forward to this interview. How have you been?
Rich, thanks for having me. Been doing great. Recently had a shoulder surgery, which kept me from being at King of the Hammers this year, which was a huge disappointment. We actually had an entry and couldn't make it. So other than that, we're doing great.
Well, that's too bad. I always hate to see an entry burned. So how's the shoulder doing at this point?
Shoulder's doing great. About 3.5 weeks into it. Probably have another 3 weeks in a sling and physical therapy, first time having rotator cuff surgery, but it seems to be a pretty common thing these days. Right,
that's true. I should have mine done, but I don't know if I'm going to. I don't need to throw a football or a baseball any longer, and pull-ups and pressing heavy weights is kind of out of my wheelhouse anymore. So,
gotcha.
I'll get my knees done first.
There you go.
So let's jump into this interview. And let's find out, where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I was actually born and raised in Northern California, Alameda, California, to be exact, and grew up there, and ended up leaving there at about 14 years old and moving up to the Sierras, and yeah, that's where I spent my time, going to the drag races as a young kid, and just enjoying and doing the normal things you do growing up.
And Alameda was, did that mean one of your parents was in the Navy or anything?
No,
okay.
Both parents were raised in Alameda, Oakland area, and none of them were in the military, but my dad worked for the company that would work on all the ships.
Okay.
And it's called Crowley Maritime. They own the red and white fleet there in San Francisco. So as a kid, I got to go on lots of ships and submarines and aircraft carriers. As a non-military person, it was very unique.
Right. I'm always fascinated getting a chance to be on ships. One of my favorite is down in Corpus Christi area, and it's the Lexington. And I just love the aircraft carriers. And I realized that you need to be, you can't be a huge stature, and especially in a submarine. And then
sure,
you got to be pretty nimble to get up and down those damn ladders and stairs.
Well, you wouldn't be able to do it with that rotator cuff issue, Rich. I can tell you that.
There you go. Or overweight like I am with bad knees.
You can change that.
Yeah. So let's. You said you were going to drag races and stuff? Was that down in what drag races did you go to?
Yeah, in the early years. So I'm 59 years old. So
Fremont?
First grade, second grade, we lived in the Bay Area down in there, Fremont, Alameda, and Fremont Drag Strip was the drag race of choice. It was close, and just really enjoyed it. And I just have lots of memories as a little kid going to the events and just watching. My dad would race as a hobby once in a while, and ironically, I still have that car that he bought in 1970.
Wow.
And it's almost finished. Again, it's a beautiful car, and I will drive it to work every once in a while here, and but I'll trailer it to our drag strip in Las Vegas just to bracket race and have fun.
And it's a 1970 what?
It's actually a 1963 and a half Falcon Futura hardtop, and it was a factory 4-speed V8 car, which were very limited production, kind of a rare car, if you will, for that time.
Nice. That's awesome. My dad drag raced, some at Fremont, but mainly over at Half Moon Bay when they used the airport over there for drag racing. And
yeah, that was a place I never got to go there, but my dad talked about racing Half Moon Bay. Absolutely. Yeah,
that was back in the day. My dad drag raced up until about 62 or 63, I think.
Very cool.
Yeah, I can remember when it snowed in San Bruno, and he took the dragster, or the race car. It wasn't a dragster. It was I don't know what you would call it. But anyway, I don't remember what class it was. But he went up and down San Bruno Avenue, and they're off of El Camino, where all the businesses are at, and or San Mateo Avenue, whatever it's called, right there. And it was snowing out, and they were just roasting the tires up and down the main shopping street there.
Yeah, that had to be pretty rare for it to snow in that area.
Exactly.
But, yeah, very uncommon.
So then, what other kind of activities did you do as a kid or family?
Yeah, so back then we went camping a lot, camping, fishing, and we never really had a four-wheel drive, but I can remember seeing signs back in the woods that would be posted on trees, four-wheel drive only. And my dad would drive down a lot of those roads anyway, and there were times we had issues getting out, and I can remember just loading the back of the truck up with river rock just for weight in the back to get out. But we did lots of camping, lots of trout fishing, mainly. We would fish the rock wall in the Bay Area, saltwater fishing, but that's kind of what we did, other than bicycling and bicycle, motocross and skateboards, the normal kid stuff.
Right. And you, as a student, so you did like high school up in the mountains, but you did like your early years down in the Bay Area, Alameda. What kind of student were you?
Yeah, so I was one of those students that would get by in school with kind of a B average without having to study hard. And hindsight probably wasn't a good idea, but I didn't really study real hard. I took the hard classes and passed, and it could have been better academically. And then when we moved up to the mountains, I was kind of ahead of the schooling up there. So my junior and senior year, I went to a small high school of about 385 people. And a lot of the classes that were offered at those levels, I had already taken. So it wasn't a breeze by any means, but I didn't apply myself too hard because I'd already been through all that, and then it worked out good. I didn't go to college after that. I did take some college courses, but at a junior college, but I did not go to college after that. But I played sports, baseball, football. I did some track. I did pole vaulting when I was young. And then when we moved up to the mountains, I followed up with playing football and baseball. Did a lot of snow skiing, and that was our winter activity. And in the summertime, we'd just try to ride dirt bikes in the mountains.
And when you say you moved up to the mountains, what town did you move up to?
We moved up to an area up above Sonora, more in the Twain Harte, Long Barn area, about 5,000 feet of elevation. You know, small populations, lots of small towns connected by Highway 108.
Right.
And really a fun place and really a very unique place. I'd like to go back and visit more. A lot of activities to do up there.
So did you ski then more like at Bear Valley?
No, I skied more at the Dodge Ridge area.
Okay, Dodge Ridge. All right.
Yep. Dodge Ridge. Had season passes up there. Even worked up there right out of school. Really enjoyed that. At that time, you know, we'd work up there and you'd get discounts, but the biggest thing was you'd get a season pass for extremely cheap, and so it enabled you to ski and make money as well.
Right. Awesome. That's pretty cool. And then how did you get into let's do this. What was the first car that you had when you became a licensed driver?
First car I had, I always wanted the Falcon, first of all. Always wanted that car. Unfortunately, parents went through divorce around 73. My dad drove that car for about a year. And back then, that Falcon would run mid-12s, which in the early 70s, you know, that was extremely quick, and mainly due to the lightness of the car itself. He had built a 289, and it still had a 4-speed in it, so you know, he drove that around for a year, and that's a car I always wanted, but I didn't get that. My first car was actually a 1971 Ford Maverick, 6-cylinder, 3 on the tree. And before I graduated, my dad took it and pulled the engine and transmission out of it, put a 4-speed in it and a little Hypo 289, and I got the scatter shield and clutch out of the Falcon and the headers. But and it was a fun car. It would run like, I raced it at Fremont once, and only once, and it would go like 14 O's, which was mainly due to the rear end gearing. But my first car was a 71 Ford Maverick.
And I have to ask, because every Ford Maverick I think I can remember was green.
Nope, mine was, it looked white, but it was actually the lightest blue color you've ever seen, which everybody thought it was white.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean by the green Mavericks?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Very, very common.
Right. And
They're
so
a lightweight car also.
So when did you graduate high school? What year was that?
Yeah, so I graduated from in 1982 in the town of Tuolumne, California, which was a very popular logging town back in the day. So logging was huge, and but I lived about 25 miles away, so it was always best to take the school bus, and that was a common thing back then. In the wintertime, the bus drivers would chain up the buses and go through the snow and pick you up and unchain and get you to school. And yeah, I graduated in 1982.
Okay. I was in 76, so I'm a little bit older than you are.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And I lived, after college, I moved to, I worked in San Francisco for a short time, and then about 8 months or so, and then moved up to Placerville. And that's what I really call home, is Placerville.
So Placerville, one of my favorite elevations. After high school, spent about a year in that Sonora, Twain Harte area. My mom had relatives, cousins, that opened up a business in South Lake Tahoe. And so at 19, I moved to South Lake Tahoe and worked for their business for about a year and a half. And it would take digital photos at that time on a 3-axis mill. It actually would drill holes in acrylic, and you put a background up against it, and it looked like the photo in acrylic. And you got to remember, this was still in the early mid-1980s, so technology wasn't even close to what it was today.
Correct. Yep, I was a commercial photographer back then, and it was I decided to get out of the photography business when everything started going digital, and everybody was getting away from film, and I just didn't want to reinvest. I had so much money tied up in film at that point. I was kind of disgusted because digital, it made everybody that had a digital camera became an instant photographer because you could manipulate everything.
Oh, yeah. On my mom's side of the family, I think that my mom's side of the family actually kept Kodak in business for many decades.
Nice.
They took so many photos, and yeah, that was a different time when everything went digital. It just, boy, it changed everything, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It did for me, but that's okay. I like where I'm at now.
That's right.
So then you're working in Tahoe. That's after high school. You're still skiing, I suppose. What kind of work were you doing up there?
Yeah, so when I worked for, it was called Tahoe's Incredible Machine, and it was a franchise. They had them in Hawaii and Pier 39 and, places like that. And I still continued to ski. So Tahoe being a very seasonal place for work, as you can imagine, I would take on a second job in the winter, work at the ski rental places, because you could work half day and then go ski half day. So I skied a lot at Heavenly Valley. I lived in Lake Tahoe for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And enjoyed a lot of skiing. Shortly thereafter, I was at Caesars Tahoe. I was a valet attendant, which those are some great years. That lasted for about 2 years, and really enjoyed that position. Got to enjoy a lot of the Tahoe life, daytime activity as well as the nighttime activity.
Cool. And how did the racing career come about?
Yeah, well, very interesting. I started thinking about life and thought, I really should consider doing something that would be more beneficial in my future. I did have a friend, close friend, and roommate, and his family owned a new construction plumbing company. So what I did is I kept my position in the house in Lake Tahoe, which was a rental house, and relocated down to Roseville, and I did some plumbing, new construction plumbing. From there, I was always interested in the racing. From there, I also had a position part-time and then to full-time at a speed shop called Super Shops.
Okay.
After a couple of years in the plumbing and just a few months at Super Shops, I really decided to move back to Lake Tahoe. Super Shops offered me a position at Mallory Ignition, which was located in Carson City, Nevada, which was down the northeast side of Lake Tahoe. So knowing that I always loved drag racing, I took on that position, making minimum wage, which at the time was about $4.25 an hour. And I started commuting down the hill working at Mallory Ignition, and I was fortunate enough to get a position in what was called the mag room, which stood for magnetos. And at that time, Mallory was the only ignition company building magnetos for top fuel funny car, alcohol dragsters. And so I was there only for about 3 months, and I had the opportunity to fill in going to the races for another employee who got sick and couldn't make it. And that was in 1988. And from 1988 till the end of 1996, I only missed 6 events in that whole time frame.
Wow. That's really good.
Yep. So, so I was traveling on the road, traveling from the West Coast, starting at Pomona, California, all the way to Gainesville, Florida, up north, Washington State, Indianapolis. I mean, just the whole NHRA series. I loved it. Learned lots of things from the top people. I didn't start at the bottom. I just was thrown into the top. And after the first year for Mallory, they built a purpose-built 18-wheeler that had all of the test equipment for ignitions, parts washers, CD ignition testing, electric fuel pump flow bench, magneto recharging, and they asked me if I wanted to be the one to drive it around the country. So at that time, I think I was about 22, 23. just an amazing position. I was still making very little money, but the experience was well worth it. A couple years into that, I decided I too wanted to race, even though I had only done it briefly at a Wednesday night, Friday night local level. I just wanted to do that. And at that time, Mallory did not want to lose me from traveling, so they offered to carry my race car in the 18-wheeler. And so all the events that I was able to work at, I was also able to race at. And just an unbelievable opportunity. And with the rules that they had then, I was able to race the NHRA national events that were televised with a letter of intent that I would support the sportsman races at the same time. And so that my cars in the early years were sponsored by Super Shops. They were the popular yellow painted vehicles. They had them in several classes. I just happened to be one of the fortunate people to get to do that.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's being at the right place and right place, right time, all that, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it was funny because the people on the West Coast thought I was an East Coast racer. The people on the East Coast thought I was a West Coast racer, and I never told anybody that I was new. And I knew friends from being out there, and I studied the sport, and I studied what you were supposed to do and tried to study what you weren't supposed to do. And I was honestly very fortunate to have early success, and I won a lot of races right off the bat, and I got a lot of write-ups, and nobody had known at that time that I was new to the sport. They just assumed that I had been racing many, many years like everybody else. So it was kind of funny. It was my secret.
Nice. And were you still in the Maverick at that point?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Were you still in the Maverick?
Oh, no. So the first car that I purchased as a real race car was actually a 1968 RSSS Camaro that came from New Jersey, and it went from the dealership originally in 1968 right to a race car shop, and it was built for Pro Stock in 1969. So this group of about 3 guys had the car. It wasn't completed in time for Pro Stock, which was a new class back then, and so the car went into what they called modified production, which turned into NHRA Competition Eliminator. And it was raced all the way from 1969 till the mid-summer, September of 91, and I purchased it. And I'm looking at a picture of it right now on the wall, and it was just a first-class race car, small block powered, full chassis car. It looked all stock factory, but the only thing that was original metal was the roof and the rear quarters. Everything was duplicated in fiberglass, but it was duplicated off original parts. So it still looked like an individual pieced car. Great race car. Raced that for 2 years before I went into the rear-engine dragster race cars.
Wow. Okay. And was that like what we used to call like a shaker body?
No, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
It still had opening and closing doors.
Awesome.
Lift-off hood, lift-off front end if you wanted. In the sportsman classes, at the NHRA level, you could race 1090 index class, 990 index class, or an 890 index class. And they are all driver's classes because it was on a fixed index. So really, the person with the most money that could get there the quickest wasn't the winner because you had to compete on an index. So leaving the starting line as close to perfect as possible and getting to the other end and beating your opponent and getting there first without breaking out and running under the index was the name of the game. So very precision at both ends, and your car had to repeat at that time within 1/100 of 2 of a perfect run to win. So it's still like that today, and it's even more competitive today because of all the electronics that are available and the quality of builds and components that are available. So yeah, it's still highly contested categories.
Okay. And then you said you went into rear engine dragsters.
Yeah, so I think it was at the end of 1992. I thought that's where I needed to be. Didn't really change a whole lot. I probably, in hindsight, should have kept a Camaro, but yeah, I went into the dragsters, and that competed on an 890 index, and I would race NHRA at the events that we were at, and when it was time for all the other employees to fly home, I was still in my 20s, they gave me and my buddy Mike Phillips the opportunity to either go home, and then we would have to work at Mallory Ignition every day, or they allowed us to take this brand new 18-wheeler that they put a elevator liftgate on the back just to haul the dragster. They would allow us to go attend any other race events that we wanted to, and everything was paid for. I had to pay my own entry fees, but all of our hotels and fuel expense and food was all paid for, and we would go to the IHRA events, Super Chevy events, and other bracket drag racing events. And keep in mind, we were still promoting the company, and really the only 18-wheeler to be able to travel around and do that. It was just very unique and very special.
That sounds like a sweet gig.
Yes, it was just incredible. We ended up once we left Seattle, Washington, and decided to go to Hamburg, New York for a non-race event, and ended up stopping at Mount Rushmore because we thought that would be unique, not knowing it was the 50th anniversary of Harley Davidson. So we have a lot of unique experiences on the road. Some I can't talk about.
Right. I think statute of limitations might be up now.
Yeah, well, let's hope so.
I think we all have some of those situations somewhere in our closets.
Oh, yeah. So in between all that, one of the other fortunate things I was able to do, like I said, in 9 years I missed 6 events, and I think 5 or all 6 of those events, I actually worked at the Indy 500 month of May for Mallory Ignition.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I would go in there. Mallory had a garage there at the Indy 500. Gosh, I don't even know when it started. They were building ignitions for the Indy 500 cars from the beginning. And so I'd be there for the whole month of May, and they weren't doing too much at that time because it was all going to EFI, and they had fuel management systems within the ignitions. But I would still do a lot of testing of ignitions, did a lot of sprint car magnetos, and things like that. So that was a very unique experience as well.
What was it like at Indy during that speed week?
It was awesome. Like I say, I'd be there for the whole month, and we stayed at the Speedway Motel, and which is no longer there now, at the Brickyard. And 2 doors down was Mario Andretti's room. Next to him was Jeff Andretti's room, and it was very close-knit. Like, once you were in at that level, it was one big, huge family. Really cool. So you'd show up at the Speedway. We had all back entrance into the garages, and you'd hang out there for the day. And afterwards, you were going to dinner with the people that you met. And I mean, I have just really unique stories with Mario Andretti and Aldo, his twin, and Jeff Andretti's grandfather, which they called Red. I don't even know his real name. And in the mornings, you'd go down to the hotel lobby. They had a restaurant and all these round tables, and it was the who's who of IndyCar racing, and everybody was friends. And you would have breakfast there, and you would have dinner there most of the time, and they would all heckle each other from table to table. And I'll tell you what, there were times I would take the long route away and not go by Mario Andretti's room just because his door was always open. He always had lots of fruit and alcohol, and you couldn't pass by his room without stopping because he would make you stop. And it was really fun and very unique, and I always looked forward to that.
That's awesome. These are great stories.
Yeah, fun times. I mean, one time we were there for the U.S. Nationals, which was a drag race event, the largest drag race event for NHRA, and it takes place over Labor Day weekend. And I wanted to show some people that were involved with Mallory at the time where our garage was at the Indy 500. So we had a Lincoln Town Car, and you got to remember, it was a long time ago. And so as I'm going over to the garage area, they made us take a detour because I think they were redoing. You'd drive under these tunnels and you'd pop up on the infield. Well, I think they were resurfacing it. So they made us drive, we were the only car, across the track. And as I'm driving across the track between turns 2 and 3, I thought to myself, I probably won't ever have an opportunity like this again. So I made a hard right, and we took off making laps around the Indy 500.
and nobody stopped you?
By the time I got to the... Pardon?
Did anybody try to stop you?
They did.
Okay.
So by the time... We only went about 70 miles an hour, and all I wanted to do was drive across the start-finish line because it's about a 3 to 4 foot wide strip of the original bricks.
Right.
Which was the reason why they called it the Brickyard. And so we went across the start-finish line. About that time, there was 2 security trucks with all their lights on trying to stop us, and all I could think of was the trouble I was going to get in. And at that time, we were staying on ground at the Speedway Motel. So I did not stop. I dove into the infield. I have 5 other people in the car. It's a big Lincoln. And these white trucks are following us with their lights on, trying to stop us. And I knew the area pretty well. And so as I exited, and I forget which street it was, I think it was 16th Street, because those tunnels were still open, I happened to pick the opposite tunnel that another car went through. When I popped up on the other side, there was nobody in front of me. So we were able to leave without getting caught. But then I was worried about getting caught when we went back because I didn't know if they wrote down our license plates. So I proceeded to go to the shopping mall that was down the road, and I removed the license plates off the car so that when we went back, they wouldn't know which car it was. Later on in the weekend, when the general manager flew in, he rented a minivan, and I switched cars with him. And later on that weekend, he got pulled over for no license plates, and when he opened up the glove box to get the registration and the rental agreement out, the license plate was inside. And later on, he said he mumbled to himself something about my name and knew that it was attached to what was going on. And needless to say, I never got in trouble, never got caught for that, but it was a fun experience.
That is awesome. So you got to drive on the Brickyard. That's awesome. That's
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, good times.
So then that was one of the 5 or 6 events you didn't make over that time period?
Yeah, so when I would miss the drag race events, that was the month of May. Usually it was like a Bristol, Tennessee race, and I forget other ones were in May. It would probably only be a couple, but I would be working the Indy 500 at that time. And so I was on the road. There was one time in 9 months, like I say, I only went home 4 times in 9 months.
Wow.
And it was just an opportunity to travel and see the country and just race. I was racing 30 to 35 weeks a year.
And I take it you were single at that point.
I was single. I did not get married to my current wife, Sue, until 07.
Okay.
So I started traveling in 88 and did not get married till 07.
So late bloomer as far as marriage goes.
I don't know. It kind of fit my time schedule, actually.
Perfect. That's perfect. So then,
yeah.
How did you end up in off-road?
Well, I ended up in off-road I always liked four-wheeling. So when I lived in Lake Tahoe, we'd go on the Rubicon Trail and lots of cool trails around the Tahoe area. And we would do it in the snow. We would do it in the summer. It was just a lot of fun and always enjoyed it. At one time I had a 74 Blazer, and it had a big block 427 Corvette engine in it, and had lots of fun with that. But through drag racing, I was able to have a good relationship with Lucas Oil, and we would our company that we have now is named FigSpeed, and FigSpeed would represent Lucas Oil at the national events on the West Coast for them. So we established this relationship. At that time, I was living in Lake Havasu, and Rick Mooneyham was living in Lake Havasu, and we did a lot of rock crawling and desert four-wheeling there. And when King of the Hammers started, it was almost like how I got involved in drag racing. I saw it, I liked it, kind of wanted to do it. Bought a car. This would have been 2009, and I wanted to get involved in the off-road because it was getting difficult for me to continue drag racing because all the big events that were good to drag race at, I was having to work at, and so it kind of limited me to what I really liked. So by getting involved in off-roading, the time schedules didn't conflict. And so I was able to secure a mild sponsorship with Lucas Oil, and then I got involved. Initially, I just got involved in racing King of the Hammers in 2010, and once again, had no idea, didn't know, just that's where I started, kind of like starting in drag racing, you know. Nobody knew I hadn't done it before. So that's what got me involved, is just lack of conflict of scheduling, and I was able to go off-road racing and without it interfering.
And the first car you raced, was that one of Mooneyham's cars?
No, I bought one out of Colorado, and I forget the name of the company, actually, the chassis. I forget the name of it, but I went out there, bought it, and had an LS in it. You know, it's pretty standard at the time for what it was. I had these big King air shocks that were, I guess they didn't produce a whole lot of them, but it had those shocks on there. And then I had Rick Mooneyham. He was real close to our shop, so he updated and did the things that he thought it needed. And my co-driver, when I first started, was Joe Thompson from UFO Chassis. So Joe Thompson and I raced KOH for 4 years.
I didn't
had a
realize
great time.
that. Okay.
Yeah. And Joe, after that first year, Joe would take care of the car and make all the changes. And obviously, because of what he does now, he had just great ideas. And after 2 years of that, we decided to build a new car. And Joe got started on a new chassis. And we ended up racing that first car again a third year because we couldn't get the other car done. And after I was done with that, I sold that car to Gomez Brothers. And they had not off-road raced yet. They came out, knew I had the car for sale. They did not know Joe Thompson. They bought that car. And then Joe Thompson, shortly thereafter, I kind of introduced them to each other and just shared phone numbers, and Joe Thompson started helping out with them, and then one thing led to another, and
here we are.
We've won King of the Hammers 3 years in a row, and Joe Thompson cars are just really kicking butt.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at the first race that the Gomez's did, helping. I'm really good friends with Bob Rogie, and we ended up down there in outside of Albuquerque, and for the first race that they did, that was a combined race with the Desert Racing Association down there and Dave Cole, and so it was quite the interesting event down there, and those guys are fun to hang out with.
Oh yeah, they're a wild group, and when they bought that car, two of the brothers, I think JP and Raul, I guess it was, came out with Bob Rogie, and we went out and tested the car, and they immediately bought it, and yeah, I'm sure that was a car that they were racing at back then.
Right, it must have been. Yeah, I remember when talking to Bob, he was like, "Yeah, these guys want to go out and go trophy truck racing." And I said, and he goes, and I told him they need to get started with something, a little more, obtainable, and so that we'll get them into the Ultra 4 racing, and or what then, King of the Hammers, so that kind of style. And now look at they're racing both.
Yeah, now they're racing all the above and plenty of equipment, and a really stout team and just great cars, and they give it their all. You know, they play as hard as much as they like to have fun. They play hard both ways, and they really earned it and did a great job.
Absolutely. And so when you wheeling back there, some of those, you know, you set up in the area of, you know, the Rubicon and Tahoe. Did you ever do Barrett Lake Trail?
No, I never did. We just did what was really extremely close. You know, I probably didn't even know about that trail. Didn't even know about what was called the Fordyce Trail either. You know, the Rubicon was iconic, and it was right in our backyard. You know, we'd go in backwards, or we'd go down Highway 50 and go in Ice House Road, or we would drop in through Wrights Lake. That was another popular way we'd go in that way. And or we'd go over Strawberry and end up over at Caples Lake and do a couple of days with camping and swimming and fishing and what was cool back then is nothing ever broke. You know, we never really broke anything, so I don't know what we would have done if we would have broke parts out on the trail, but always a good time.
Yeah, I can remember that as well. Back then I was driving a 86 Chevy 1-ton short bed, so I get it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So then are you still drag racing?
Yeah, I still drag raced all the way through, well, not right now as far as drag racing goes. I try to do it. I have a dragster. That Falcon that I was talking about that my dad bought in the early years, I have it almost complete, and probably take me another week to finish it. And then fortunately, being in Las Vegas in the Henderson area, the drag strip's only half an hour away. So I just do it now for fun and enjoyment. I still travel to lots of events, but I'm not racing like I used to. So what I did all those years working for Mallory is I would go to the events, and other guys would fly in, and I would race, and we would service all of the race cars. And when they would allow me and my partner, Mike Phillips, to go to these other events in between, we saw a need for somebody to support the sportsman racer. So I always thought when I would leave Mallory that I would try to create a program that I would be doing the same thing for multiple companies, going to those events to support the sportsman racers with products and technical services. So at the end of '96, I had the opportunity to drive a top alcohol dragster for a gentleman named Jerry Darien. And at that time, he had been close to the family that owned In-N-Out Burger. So he was getting that sponsorship for the first time In-N-Out Burger had sponsored anything. So I was going to stay in the industry with Mallory for that opportunity, because that would allow me to race that class. After we went testing and everything went pretty well, I got kicked out for one of the Pedagon Brothers, who their family is synonymous with drag racing and has been since the 60s.
Absolutely.
The only thing is, nobody ever told me I was kicked out. I had to read it in National Dragster myself. So when that happened, I decided to actually start the business that I have now. At that time, it was called Figueroa Motorsports because I couldn't come up with a name. And I put together a trailer program and enlisted the top companies who I knew the owners of within our industry. And my plan was to represent them at the sportsman events and bring their products and services to those events to support the sportsman racers. Because honestly, at that time, they were the only ones buying parts at the drag strip, because the pros had lots of sponsorships, and a lot of the companies didn't charge either the racers or full price for those. So it really wasn't a huge moneymaker for them at the time. So I had that idea, put that together, and I was still drag racing and traveling the country all over at that time. I would cross the United States 3 or 4 times a year. And it worked out pretty well. I later changed the name to FigSpeed, one word, and now I just stick to the West Coast events because there's plenty of events for us to attend, and we still provide that service I attend about 18 events a year, most of it all drag race events, but about 3 or 4 off-road events. In 2023, that was the first time we went to Trail Hero as a vendor. Really liked it, great atmosphere. And living where we live, all of these events are close.
Right.
So it's really been fantastic.
Yeah, Trail Hero. I have to give kudos for my son for building that event up to what it has become. He's done an outstanding job with that.
Yeah, and I share our experiences with all of our vendors. Unfortunately, a lot of the owners of these companies are either the companies are selling because the original owners are kind of aging out, if you will. And so I'm doing my best to keep the new blood, if you will, within the industry up to date. So I try to do small reports after these events because they have no idea. They've never been to those events, and a lot of them have never been to any of the events. They just happen to be in the positions that they're at. One of the good events that I attended that I shared with was the Bonneville events in August. I've only been there a couple of times, but just a great experience if you're into motorsports as a whole. It doesn't matter if you're into sprint cars, drag racing, rock crawling, whatever you're into. That Bonneville is just very unique, and it has something for everyone.
I'd like to make it to Bonneville someday. That's always been something that's intrigued me, and I hope to do that. I hope to get out there for their Speed Week and watch some of the racing out there.
Yeah, you need to put it on your list because the salt, it's not in great shape, and they're not going to be able to continue that forever because it kind of deteriorates. And so if you ever get that opportunity, you got to make sure and put it on your list.
Yeah, get it done soon. Right.
That's right.
So what's in the future? Still going to continue doing the programs you have, or is there something else in the wind that you want to try?
I really enjoy it. We have a brick and mortar speed shop here in Henderson, and we've been here about 15 years. And part of this that keeps me going is I truly enjoy helping racers and non-racers alike within our industry. I've been fortunate to have a condensed education that I don't know if I've ever would have been able to have had I not been in a position that I was, the learning curve on all the different products. And I ended up, I raced the Hammers type events for 4 years and had to stop that because it was conflicting with all the events I had to do for other companies as well. But recently, my buddy Jack Sadler and I purchased a 4500 car. And we raced the Lake Havasu event in 2023, really liked it. We were underpowered, great car, really good car, and but it had original V6 in it, so we've since yanked all that out, bought a high horsepower 415-inch LS engine for it, and we were entered in King of the Hammers this year, and ironically, with my shoulder surgery, he always tries to beat me out on things, so what he decided to do was hurt his shoulder 3 weeks before I hurt mine. So he too had to have shoulder surgery. So we were unable to make it. But for the future, we plan on hitting some of the desert races, whenever we can, because there's a lot of it here locally. We'll take it to Trail Hero and just have a good time with it, and then work in the afternoon into the evening. We'll race Lake Havasu again, and hopefully we'll be in good shape for King of the Hammers for 2025. But we just want to stick with the same program we got going and just add some more off-road events. I truly enjoy it, and it's a good group of people. It's a great group of people. Love being around the whole program, and that's what we're going to add for the near future.
Excellent. Let's talk about your wife. You said you met her in the what?
Yeah, I met my wife in Lake Havasu. When I was in Lake Tahoe with this business, it wasn't really a business I could do successfully in that location. with the wintertime conditions and all that. So I'd happened to go on a short vacation in March to Lake Havasu, never knowing what that was about. Going there, everybody's garage was bigger than their house. It was very affordable. The motorsports, whether it be street rods, hot rods, dirt bikes, sand cars, boats, it's huge. It's Lake Havasu is regarded as the highest level of motorsports in the country. It has the most hot rods per capita than anywhere in the country, and I saw it once there, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is kind of where I need to be. So I went back, found a lot to purchase, to build a house on. It was extremely affordable at that time, but I had to get a loan. So I got set up, went into this bank, and met this loan officer. Her name was Sue, and I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful person, great personality, and I didn't know anything about her, but anyway, so I met her, got my loan. About 2 years later, with no contact, after living there, interest rates dropped, down pretty far. This would have been probably around 2002, I guess. And when the interest rates dropped to around 5 3/4, I decided to refinance. So I went back into that same bank, and lo and behold, Sue was still there, and one thing led to another, and we've kind of been inseparable since then. We started dating in probably around 2001, 2002. We got married in 2007, and 2010 we relocated to Henderson, Nevada, and everything is going great. She's a wonderful person.
Excellent.
She actually works for our business and all of the paperwork, and she does have an office here, but she works mainly from home.
Very good. Very cool. Excellent. And so
she says that she likes the racing, and she does, but I don't know if she likes it as much as me, and honestly, I don't know if there is anybody that likes all this as much as me, but she puts up with it, and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, that's important. Supporting each other with whatever each partner wants to do is great. What are her interests?
Her interests are, I have two stepsons, Ryan and Randy, and obviously family with her, and we now have two grandchildren, Russell and Rory, and our one son, Randy, he lives here locally in the Las Vegas area, Henderson, and Ryan, he lives in Southern California. He's actually a director, commercials, just a lot of different things, video, stuff for bands and commercials and just lots of good things. But her focus is really family, grandkids. We have a golden doodle dog that just doesn't leave her side for anything. And so she's pretty full with that and just enjoying life and family.
And she likes to wreck wheel?
She does, as long as, quote, I don't go on any darn goat trails. She doesn't like to go up sides of mountains on goat trails. She just likes to recreational wheel.
I get that. When we were doing Dirt Riot, I'd take Shelly, my wife, out onto the race courses, typically after the races, and to pick up all the markers and everything like that. And she does a lot. She did a lot of off-roading from the passenger seat, but one time I got her in when we were in Texas at one of the race courses. I said, "Hey, why don't you drive the race course?" And she was like, "Okay." So she jumped in the driver's seat. We were at what was the start line, and you went about 50 feet, and then you made a hard left and down a pretty good ledge that had a big crack line in the middle of it. And she drove off that thing, she didn't know what to fear. And
right.
When the drivers all looked at that start line, especially the sportsman classes, they were like, "Oh man, that's a pretty good drop off going, down into this quarry bottom." And she just drove off that like a champ, not knowing that she should have been worried a little bit. I was a little concerned because she was going a fairly good clip. And then we started across the floor of the quarry, and most of it was just all big rock flat ground, but there was all these like bowling ball size rock that had been moved around, and it was pretty clear down the middle. But she got to near the end of the quarry where you go back out into the trees, and I had her stop, and I said, okay, first of all, we're just driving the race course. We're not racing the race course. And you don't have to hit all the rocks.
Right.
And she goes, what do you mean? I was hitting the rocks?
Yeah, that's funny.
I love her dearly, but she was looking like, I don't know where she was looking. And I said, you gotta concentrate what's in front of you. And, if you hit those rocks all the time, eventually something's going to break. So, you can go a little left, a little right, work your way over and around the rocks instead of just right over the top of them. And she drove the rest of the race course, and did really well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, once she slowed down.
Well, I started taking my wife Sue to the drag races here. She would travel with me sometimes and fly in, but when I would take her to some of the races, she would comment on how easy it looked. I had some fast dragsters. Myself and John Spar, his family owned B&M at the time. His dad was a founder of B&M until in the 50s, and then they sold it in 05. But we were the only two cars that had superchargers in the country because we were wanting to promote the B&M superchargers. So I continued with that, and now lo and behold, it's extremely popular. But my wife would make comment on how easy it looked, and I said, if it's so easy, maybe you should try it. And so she goes, well, maybe I should. So I built her a brand new dragster, limited power, had a small block on alcohol. It would run high 7-second, low 8 flat quarter mile. And I got it all tested and all built for her, and we went up to Vegas, and her burnouts were perfect, and she could run the 8th mile perfect, but she would run faster mile an hour in the 8th than she would in the quarter. She did not like holding the throttle down all the way through the quarter mile. So that didn't last too long. So then this one time so I got rid of that car and to people that we knew. And we were on the Rubicon Trail once, and we were just starting to go into Little Sluice, and I had a built Jeep, and I was probably towards the back. And so I went up to spot some people through it and kind of got tied up, and as you do, leading through all that and a little bit beyond. And when I went back to get the Jeep, she had actually hopped in it, and people spotted her through there. And she really didn't have any off-road experience, but with the spotter, she was able to drive right through it and really liked it. And so from then on, we would do some of the easier trails, if you will, in the Lake Havasu area. And she would drive once in a while, really liked it, but she kind of got out of it after that.
Very good. Awesome.
But not knowing what to expect, they don't know any better. They just do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, Les, I want to say thank you so much for spending the time and talking about your life and your activities and your passion. I can really tell you have that passion for racing, whether it's pavement or off-road. And, it's great to hear that passion is why most of us continue to do this.
Absolutely, Matt. I thank you for the opportunity. And if you're ever out there at the races and you see a white JK with a big FigSpeed logo on the side, make sure you stop by and say hello.
Absolutely. And my next time through Vegas, maybe I'll even stop through in Henderson and say hello if you're there.
Please do.
All right. Les, thank you so much. And I'll let you know before this episode's going to air.
That sounds great. Thanks again. I'll see you at the events.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.